The next panelist that we have is Shri Ranbir Sekhon, and I'll quickly introduce him, and then Ranbir ji can take over. So Ranbir ji has his masters in arts from School of Oriental and African Studies in London, and he is deeply inspired by the books of Shri Sitaram Goel ji and Ram Swarup ji. And Conrad Elst has been a constant inspiration to him and has helped him founding the UK group of Hindu human rights. Today, Ranbir ji would be talking about Voice of India in practice, Hindu human rights. So I request Ranbir ji to present his views.
Namaste.
Namaste.
So actually, it's Ranbir Singh. I mean, I don't always use Sekhon. How many Jat Sikhs are involved in Hindu activism? So that's why I tend not to use my surname. That aside, it was actually when I was at SOAS that I came across books by Sri Karnal, SITARAM, Ram Swarup. They're in the library. The teaching, of course, is even, and it's in the case now, in those days especially, slanted towards the left. So India's problems are blamed on Hindu fundamentalism, Hindu fascism, all sorts of things. You can see the video on the HHR website which exposes this. So you're being taught one thing, but you're reading books which are giving you something that's completely opposite, and no one's discussing it. Now I made a mistake then, which a lot of people do even now. And I was only 21, but people do it right into the end of their lives. I ignored inconvenient facts. However, it stays in your mind. It kind of eats at you. You try to harmonize what you're being taught, what you're actually reading, and what you're witnessing out there. You know, how do you make sense of this cognitive dissonance? The big change came in age 25. I read Ibn Waraq's book, Why I'm Not a Muslim. Islamic radicalism had been pushing in the UK for many years on campuses. No one was really attacking it. Everyone knew there were a problem, but they were kind of avoiding the subjects. And this is just as the internet was taking off, so it's very hard to get accurate information. It was after that that I really started looking at Voice of India again properly. And to this day, SITARAM Goel's book, Ram Swarup's books, that they remain incredible. As I'm sure you're aware, a lot of our thinking would be very different without the trailblazing they did. Of course, with Sri Conrad's entry into the scene, this brought a much needed Western perspective to it. Because even now, look, I mean, even if we all speak English, and this is not just for India, okay? They say, what was England and America? Two countries divided by a common language. The thinking, the culture is different, yeah? And in India, the culture is different, okay? I'm born in the UK, parents are Indian, but my thinking is not like in India, so my approach will be different. And this is an important thing to understand, because this is where Hindus often fall down. There's no single approach. For me, it's not hard to combine both the Indian and the Western stuff. And I'm inspired by groups such as the Anti-Nazi League and anti-fascist groups that fought racists in the streets of Britain. And that's one of the reasons why Hindu Human Rights Group was formed. We wanted to highlight the issues faced by Hindus people knew about, but it wasn't really being pushed. Hence, our first demonstration was against persecution of Hindus in Bangladesh. That's over 20 years ago, yet it continues this day, as we found this week. There seemed to be a reluctance, though, and I know we criticised Sangh Borivar, but the fact is there was a lot of reluctance. What Sitaram Goel wrote back about the Sangh in the 50s remains true today. They're not very concerned about any criticism of Hindus. They're not. But what it is, you can't criticise the organisation. That is the case with Indian politics as a whole. You can't criticise the tribe, the group, clan, political, wherever the entity is. You can't criticize it. You must show loyalty to it. Yeah. Getting ahead is not based on talent or intelligence. It's based on that loyalty, psychophancy. That has been imported into Hindu organizations in Britain on the whole. We criticized the BJP just now. But things in India will not change. And the reason it won't change is until you get rid of that colonial mindset, which has been inherited and entrenched, which is that you have a system in place that is set up to benefit the rulers, not the ruled. Yeah. In the UK, MPs are public servants. Now, theoretically, same is true in India. That's not the case. Even to the level of the MLA, the level of Tehsildar, people are elected to rule you, not to serve you. Difference in mentality, which is why in the UK, Hindu organizations go to MPs, begging for help. Well, you don't do that. They serve you. I mean, that's why they're elected. It's a public service job. In UK, police are public servants. India still has the 1864 Police Act. It's to quell dissent, to keep people kicked down. That's why even my own family in India, people become police officers so they can go around bossing people around, beating up with lackey and demanding free food. Now, I'm saying all this because until we face these issues and we look at it, we're not going to change anything. Yeah. Now, human rights didn't have this hangover, didn't have this cultural baggage, which is why we're different, which is also why other Hindu groups oppose us. However, it doesn't stop us from actually raising those issues. Yeah. Those books written by Voice of India are very important, but you know, GOEL has something right at least. Yeah. You have to have action. You have to put these things in place, and you have to do that not by rioting, but by changing the narrative. Yeah. Unless you do that, the same stuff will continue. We can complain about media bias, political bias, academic bias, but unless you go ahead and challenge it head on, it's not going to change. People aren't going to change their opinions unless they're exposed. That's how it is. Yeah. So that's why for the last 20 years, Hindu human rights has pushed protest, has pushed lobbying MPs, has pushed stuff in its website, now looking at new areas. And one thing we say is we're proudly polytheistic. There is no superiority in monotheism. Yeah. Outside Voice of India, there are two things. Well, actually, I'll mention thoroughly because it's important. Two things you must all read. Yeah. One is John Gray's books, Straw Dogs and Black Mass. The reason is they take apart all the Western monotheistic narrative, Christianity, Islam, and its heirs, secularism, because it comes from Christianity. Yeah. Although it's regarded nihilistic, from the Indian mindset, it won't make a difference. And the reason is we never believe in utopia, which leads to a dystopia. We never believe in this golden age, in past or the future. Okay? I mean, Guy Jurgen's not the same thing. So how do you feel this nihilistic mindset you now get with Jyotish? So I'll recommend David Frawley's book on Jyotish, because Jyotish gives you a pathway, a light, in order to understand your life, yeah, and the cosmos. It doesn't assume a utopia. This stuff only came about because of the activism within Hindu human rights, because intellectually you have to take on the missionaries, you have to take on the anti-caste groups, as though they're called. You have to take on the people who think that the problem with India is Hindu intolerance. How do you do that unless you research it? And how do you do that unless you go into what we call the enemy camp? Yeah, and this enemy camp, it's not always inspired by malice. Some of these people, take the anti-caste groups, they actually want to help with social justice. They actually want to improve things. Unfortunately, just like the communists in China and the Soviet Union, they're misguided. And it's to expose that and expose the flaws that is important. Although this job ahead of us is, you know, difficult, it actually isn't as hard as when we first started out. The main opposition Hindu human rights have had has actually been from other Hindu groups. 2012, there was a event in London for Hindu human rights weren't even invited. Yet 2 years later, I got invited to speak at the Al-Mahdi Institute in Birmingham, a Shia Islamic institute. I've worked well with Ahmadis, worked well with Christian groups. Yet, with the Hindu organizations in the UK at least, complete Stonewall, complete grey rock, no interest, very little support. Our last protest, very few supported us, because it's that tribal jealousy coming in. You can't attack an organization, you can't show flaws. People saying if inside, let's say, the Sangh, you can expose it. No, you can't. You're meant to keep quiet. The Sangh will, as with any political entity, will defend its own. Remember, Shreen Dawani that murder in South Africa was in the RSS in the UK. Yet they defended him right to the last minute. NHS National Institute is part of the Sun. Whenever someone attacks them, they're on the defensive. And they will get attacked again by Cribber Carl in Cambridge. She will be attacking them. The point is, everyone goes, we must go beyond our egos. We must go on these petty disputes. There's nothing wrong with that. But why isn't it being done? Because no one can get past this tribal loyalty. Yeah? The mentality needs to change. That's what we found in HHR. It is very important to honor SITARAM, GOEL, and Ranbir, on their memory by taking ideas and putting them to practice. Having great ideas is fantastic. Me speaking here, you may like what I say, you may not. Me writing stuff, yeah, fine. Someone else you writing stuff. Anyone's writing stuff. Anyone's going to research is fine. But unless that is used in some way to change the narrative, nothing will change. And we'll be here in 20 years' time. Older, maybe not wiser, hopefully, but we're not going to be wiser unless we change that narrative. That's what I'll leave you with. There are plenty of materials within Western countries that tackle the very same nefarious forces attacking Hindus in India. If I was to criticize Christianity, for example, I'm calling him fundamentalist. If a white person like Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris attacks it, they're called rationalists. It's the same argument, but depending on who says it, depends on how they're categorized. So you take it apart. How many on here know these anti-caste groups are pushing ideas that are actually anti-Semitic and conspiratorial? Because no one takes it apart. Because unless you have the information, unless you have those tools, you can't tackle these things. You're always on the back foot. You're like a puppet whose strings are being tweaked by somebody else, who's always got that advantage. You don't play that narrative. You change that narrative. You show the flaws in that narrative. And in terms of India itself, like take the CAA. This was a bill to provide accelerated fast-track status for refugees suffering persecution. Now, in 5 minutes, the media walked it into an anti-Muslim bill. It was nothing of the sort. The same thing with Article 370. It's attacking Muslims. So that Iran can't have free will on it. But he's totally silent on the very real persecution of Muslim Uyghurs in China, the very real persecution of Muslim Balochis in Pakistan, and even Kashmiris in Balochistan and Azad Kashmir, who, as some of you might be aware, protested, actually want to join India. These things aren't taken apart. The accusations that BJP are terrorist stuff, when a BJP sent forces into Pakistan to attack them as proxies, simple things that are missed. Anyone could tackle it, but those things are being missed. If the media doesn't pick it up, it doesn't make a difference. You form your own media. You form your own YouTube channel. That's the beauty of the internet now. We're not stuck in having to pander to big media companies if we want to. They start from somewhere. Now, I don't agree with RT or similar anti-Western news channels. The fact is they exist and provide an alternative and change the narrative. And I see it as a threat in the information war. There is no, Wyom's doing quite a good job as well, but there's no reason why Hindus can't do that if they wanted to. And really, that's what I'll leave you with. If you're going to honor the memories of these two great pioneers, you do it by that activism, both on the ground and by changing the narrative. Unless you change it, nothing will move. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ranbir ji. That was very insightful.